Yo, what's going on today, guys? We're back for another video. So it is finally time for the EX tier list. It's been exactly 1 week since the new set dropped, and I feel like I could accurately make a pretty decent tier list. So for the tiers, we have the top tier very strong, we have the high tier strong, mid tier alright, low tier heroes, the rogue, which are EX Pokemon not very common, but you might see once in a while because they're either fan favorites or they have a very niche player base. We have the underrated, in my opinion, which are EX Pokemon that are EX Pokemon that are not played, but I actually think are low-key slept on, especially with Oricorio missing. Then we just have the not relevant at the moment, which are EX Pokemon that are just either one bad or not being played because they currently don't have a good partner. So just to save everybody 30 minutes of time, I will now just fill out the not relevant category. So this is exactly why I said save you guys 30 minutes of your time, because this is literally 3 rows, and yes, this probably would even take you longer than 30 minutes if I wanted to explain why every single one of these cards are not being meta relevant. So remember, this tier list is going to be aimed towards the higher end of the game with stuff like Master Ball and the top level of tournament games. So this is why some of the cards in here, for example Celebi and Executive EX, are going to be way better than stuff like Lapras EX, but at the top level of the game, these cards are currently not seeing any play at all. So basically, I'm just going to go from order from the bottom to the top first. So we're going to start with the underrated. And there are 2 cards that come into my mind when we get to this category. So the 2 cards are going to be both Palkia EX and Crabdominal. So in my mind, Crabdominal is, a pretty good wall as you do set up Palkia, as it's only 1 energy. And why were these cards bad last season? Well, we had the Oricorio pandemic with both Oricorio Magnezone and Oricorio Greninja being one of the most represented decks just everywhere in ranked and competitive tournaments. But with the introduction of Savali, all the Savali variants, where we have the Lollipop version, we have Rampardos, we have even an Oricorio version, which definitely can give this deck a hard time. But at least in ranked, dude, with the absence of Oricorio, I actually feel like Crabdominal and Palkia has a pretty good matchup into the meta. One, Crabdominal can take a lot of hits. For example, in the Buzzwole matchup, Kartana, we can heal up the damage with Irida. Pheromosa only does 20 damage, so 2 attacks gets healed up by 1 Irida, and Buzzwole only does 120 damage, max 140 with a red. So Crabdominal could pretty tank it. So it's pretty easy for Crabdominal to be an HP to live that hit, and then Palkia will actually one-shot Buzzwole if you do have a Guzma in your deck. So I feel like it's probably would be pretty decent Buzzwole. Same thing with the poison Guzzler deck. I feel like it would be pretty hard to knock out something like Crabdominal and Palkia. Even stuff like Savali's gonna have a hard time knocking out Crabdominal. Palkia gets set up, bro, just one-shots everything in the back. And then Charizard, obviously Crabdominal 1 is at an HP where Charizard actually can't one-shot you unless you have a red. And then Palkia will be able to do a massive 170 damage attack to Charizard. Combine that with the damage probably Crabdominal already got off, which is either gonna be 80 or 100. You should be able to be really decent in the Charizard matchup. So I think just looking from an outside perspective, I think this deck does pretty good into all the meta decks besides Oricorio. I'm just not even trying to gaslight anybody. But that's just my personal opinion. And then for the last underrated card, this is a little bit of copium. I do think this is a little bit of copium, but I feel like a low and Raichu possibly in these Tapu Koko decks, with the electrical cord, could be something to look into. Is it actually going to be good? Maybe not, but in my mind, because usually people are just playing kind of Pikachu EX as that 150 blaster. I feel like Raichu could be something to look at. Maybe this is just code because I really like a low and Raichu as a Pokemon and I just want it to be good. But theoretically, it might be able to work. So next up, we have these rogue decks that are you might run into, you probably won't, in either Ultra Ball and Master Ball. So the first one is Pikachu EX. I've seen most of the Tapu Koko or Oricorio decks just not play Pikachu EX anymore. So you might see one here and there in one of those decks splashed in for that 150 attack. But I think most decks basically drop that because they don't want to start with it, because starting with it is just very bad. You'd rather start with either the Tapu Kokos or Corios or even the Zororas. So you might see it, you probably won't anymore because it kind of phased out, bro. It was kind of a day 2, it was kind of a day 1, day 2 type of situation in that deck. And then everyone realized you really don't need it after all. At the very beginning of the season, Articuno EX was doing pretty good for in rank because Savali Rampardos. Articuno's always had a pretty good Rampardos matchup. And it was something. So I'll put it on Rogue just to give it some credit. I don't think it's I kind of think it already fizzled out of the meta, but it did do something at the very early beginning, so I will give it a little bit of praise. Basically because you could disrupt your opponent with Sabrina's and stuff, so it's really good into the Savali matchup because Rampardos variant was not running Leaf against the Blast, the Lollipop variant, whatever the dude's name is. They are playing double Leaf, so the Sabrinas aren't as impactful, so you can't really stall your opponent in that variant of the deck. is that I don't think Articuno has the best matchup in everything else, but you might see it here and there, at least in Ultra Ball maybe. But it honestly, low-key, is probably not relevant, but it had some success at the beginning, so I'll give it a little bit of credit, like I said. So next up, we actually have Beedrill EX. So Beedrill EX, I'm going to put it in Rogue because you might see it here and there. Like, thinking about it, bro, Beedrill going second denies Savali from setting up in the active spot, which could be very useful. Also, you know, in the Buzzwole matchup, it actually does one-shot all the Pheromosas and the Cortanas if they don't have a Leaf Cape. And it can be pretty annoying to erase the energy. The downside, though, is like Charizard is like pretty relevant. So, like, obviously you can make it so Charizard has to like waste one more turn, but with the Savali variant, it's pretty easy to get that energy, like that extra couple energies you need before going in on the Charizard, so Beedrill won't really be able to disrupt you. Then you also have that Lollipop variant of Savali, which will do, you know, it's going to do 150 damage to Beedrill. So if Beedrill has any sort of damage on it from Savali, you're just going to get one shot. Also, I don't think Masquerada is also the best in this meta because this meta is like not the most like EX dominated format. The way this format it really is, besides like Darkrai and Giratina, is like you have like that one EX Pokemon in your deck that's like the last attacker, then all your other Pokemon are non-EXs. So like Beedrill is like in a state where like its best partner isn't the best right now, which makes Beedrill itself not the best. But you still might see this in like stuff like Ultra Ball. In Master Ball you really don't see this because, you know, Master Ball is like the highest level of the game, so you really only see like 5 to 6 decks mainly. But I think against like top meta matchups, like some of them it can do like fairly decent against. I think it's just mainly like the fire decks in the meta just holding it back, plus the fact that Masquerada is not the best right now. Our second rogue option is going to be Infernape. So Infernape was a anti-meta call the last couple days of last season ranked, and I don't think it got any worse. But basically Grass decks besides Buzzwole has fallen off. So Infernape actually can one-shot Buzzwole, which is a cool thing. It does 160 damage max. So Buzzwole will live with 10 HP, but you can just slot a Guzma in the deck and then boom, you could one-shot it very easily. The best variant last season was Turtonator Infernape, which you probably just play Savali Infernape instead now. And yeah, it could be like a very decent, fast, aggressive version of Savali, and it's like a fire variant. But honestly, at the end of the day, Charizard EX is probably just more consistent and better because you can attack more, you do more damage, you charge up the energy by yourself, so you don't ever have to worry about energy management, and you get multiple attacks off back to back. So Infernape is not really garbage, it's just this better fire types out there that kind of like does its job a little bit better. Plus Masquerada isn't as relevant as before, so it's really cool niche of being a really good matchup into Masquerada is not there anymore. So the next rogue decks are going to be actually both Genetic Apex Charizard and then Moltres. I always like to pair them together because basically they are a package. And essentially, bro, Oricorio is gone, so technically Moltres and Charizard are still really good. But we're in a very fast meta, bro, especially with Savali. We're going to be able to knock out Moltres really fast. So unless your opponent gets the God combo of being able to get like 3 coin flips really fast, get into that rare candy Charizard, you're only gonna have like one shot at max mostly, unless you get really lucky and get like 6 coin flips, dude, back to back. And also because we're, like I said, for same thing as Beedrill and like Infernape, a lot of these decks have like basic non-EX Pokemon that you have to go through first, and Charizard really doesn't love playing against those decks that you have to knock out 3 things. Charizard would rather just, you know, knock out one thing, take a hit, knock out the other EX Pokemon, and win the game. Getting that through KO sometimes with the energy discard is kind of just too hard for it right now in this fast-paced meta. This might be a cope. But I feel like Ultra Necrozma. Obviously, it just came out, so we don't know yet. But I feel like someone is going to discover a very decent list that is either going to be alright, like it's going to be a very like niche option that people might play, or it's just going to be bad. So you know what? I'll put it in underrated. I just feel like there is a deck list that probably hasn't been solved yet that this Pokemon might be alright, and maybe it is just bad, maybe it's just not relevant at the end of the day. But if you actually can get it set up online and disrupt your opponent, like, you can win the game. Obviously the hard part is getting it set up, but there is a possibility that we just don't have the correct deck list created yet. I'm not saying Necrozma is a top tier. I'm not saying anything like that. I don't even think it is a top tier. I think it's a fun card that can be a top tier if you get it set up and you actually are able to discard the correct cards from your opponent's deck. Sometimes you can get it set up, discard the wrong cards, and your opponent still wins. But I think there's potential, just because the attack is essentially so broken if you can't get it off. Where I will put it in underrated, but at the end of the day, bro, it could just not relevant. Which, like, you know, any of these cards could be in this underrated category. Next up is going to be Gengar EX. So Gengar EX, one, It is mainly played in the non-EX Gengar, the one that does 1 energy for 50. It's kind of like an extra slot you can't choose in to be able to go into. And the reason that Gengar is very niche is because Savali, is heavily reliant on using a support card, which Gengar will shut off. So that basically forces Savali to be stuck at a 50 damage attack. So if you can get an early Gengar, non-EX Gengar, disrupt them and then actually charge up for a Gengar EX, it can be very volatile in that matchup. Against the other matchups, it's all right. Gengar still has the problem where it has a broken ability, but you can't set up, it's not set up, you can't do a lot of damage because you only do 100 damage. Also, against these Ultra Beast decks, you could like theoretically shut off Lucami too, which could be like the way your opponent was like playing around the matchup. They were like planning on using a Lucami and Gengar EX comes in and shuts it off, and then you could win like that. So I think Gengar EX is decent, but at the end of the day, dude, not a lot of damage still. You do have to high roll, get the Gengar early for it to be really impactful. And you might see it here and there. Like I've definitely placed against like I think 3 Master Ball Gengars in like the top like 1,000 to 1,500 range. So you do see it here and there. It's just not very common. So next up is Garchomp EX. So Garchomp EX is very rogue. So I was told that Savali Garchomp is very good. It's like an underrated deck. I personally have not played around with it yet, so I'm not too sure if it actually is that good. But Garchomp, if you can't get it early, can be very deadly. Oricorio is not around anymore, so that's like one thing that's like pretty good for it, because Oricorio could have been annoying. So yeah, I think Savali Garchomp is like a deck. It's not the most common. Being able to snipe for 50 early on is pretty good. It's always strong. It basically just got kind of like outshined because last season it was Garchomp and Rampardos, but then Savali came out, which is just a more well-rounded card. The pair with Rampardos, so people kind of just like drop Garchomp for that. But Garchomp really never got worse. If anything, it kind of got better, bro, with the absence of Masquerada, which was like its worst matchup. I think Garchomp is just one of the cards like people were just like not paying attention to, and I think it's a very strong card still that people were just like not respecting. Because like one cool thing about Garchomp too, if you think about it, bro, if you can actually go into a turn 1 Garchomp, your opponent can never place a Skull Fossil down because you can just easily snipe it. So in the Savali Rampardos matchup, it's pretty good. And you can use Lily to live 2 Savali attacks if they do go second. So it has that going for it. So it's probably like a really good card in the Savali mirror match if you can face them. Probably Buzzwole, probably a little bit rough time because they do bench damage and stuff like that, and they have like Erica. And then Guzzlord, who knows, but like it's not like I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's the best of the best. So I'll put it in the Rogue because you might see it here and there. So I think that does it for the Rogue / underrated category. The only Pokemon I'm not too sure of is Mewtwo, because I have personally not seen Mewtwo at all. So I think I'm gonna have to just put it in not relevant at the moment, because I like before you could play with Tapu Lele and stuff like that, and it was all right, but I think Tapu Lele isn't as good this season anymore. So I'm gonna put it in not relevant, but maybe it could be in one of these categories. Just personally, I've not seen it, and I've actually seen these other decks being played over it. Actually, one last card I want to put in the Rogue category is going to be Aerodactyl. So you might see Aerodactyl here and there, but it's very uncommon. Basically, it's a way to counteract the Silvally meta and stuff like Charizard. Obviously, you can still evolve on the bench, but that active type null will not be able to evolve, making it like pretty useless with a 2 retreat cost. But there's just so many cards in the meta that don't evolve, such as the Ultra Beast and the stuff like Darkrai Giratina still being around, but I don't think Aerodactyl is that impactful. Some people do play it, and it can be alright, like I said, in this type null / Silvally matchup. But like I feel like every other matchup in the game, bro, it's not really that good. So it's a very uncommon like tech card that you might see in some of these like fighting energy decks. You know what, now that I'm looking at this stuff, yeah, Gyarados is probably just not relevant at the moment. Doesn't really have a good partner. Manaphy is not the best anymore. Meta's too fast, so Manaphy is just a free carry that you really don't want to give your opponent. Maybe in the future Gyarados can rise back up because it is a very strong card, just doesn't have a good partner. Also, I'm really looking at all these like remaining EX Pokemon, and we're in such a weird situation where like I feel like we have like a lot of top tier and strong, and I feel like we don't have a lot of mid tier and high cards. I feel like we're like in a pretty balanced meta. But anyways, for the low tiers, I'm gonna put Gallade. So there's this Gallade deck. Basically, it's gonna be Stoutland. I feel like I'm not saying that card's name right, but it's basically that in Gallade. And because that Pokemon ability forces your opponent to need 1 more energy to attack, it basically allows Gallade to do an extra 20 damage on Pokemon, which can be very impactful. Like, I don't think it's as uncommon as these other decks in a Rogue, because I do actually see it a fair amount, especially when I do watch people's streams. I think it's more popular in like the Japanese community for Pokemon Pocket, because when I watch the Japanese players, I feel like I see that deck more often being used, or just like I'm seeing them play against that deck. So it is something definitely to worry about. Plus Gallade is always one of the Pokemon, bro, where like I don't really see it too often, but then it always does surprisingly good in like a tournament or something, or like it like actually is being seen on tournaments. So I'm gonna put it in low tier because I think it's all right. I don't think it's bad. Basically, so Gallade can one-shot Savali, I'm pretty sure, with the weakness, so that is something you want to note. But against his other cards in the meta, I mean, it doesn't really do anything. You know, it's alright against like stuff like Stoke Charizard, but I don't think it's like too good into Buzzwole decks. Like maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't think like Gallade's not getting those one-shots that it kind of like wants to, I don't think. And I don't know, bro. It's just one of those it's like, I don't know. It's being played with that deck, bro. I think it's alright. I think it's just alright. I don't know what to say, man. So next up in low tier, I'm actually gonna have to place my friend the Decidueye. I think the Decidueye is probably better than Gallade. This, by the way, this is not ordered. By the way, this is just putting them in. But also, I do think the Decidueye is better than Gallade. But essentially, I think the Decidueye has kind of like fallen off because I think the best partner was Masquerada. We've already talked about Masquerada being pretty bad in the meta because a lot of non-EXs. Also, something I didn't mention is that a lot of decks are playing Red Card and Mars, which is just another problem for Masquerada that I just never mentioned. But essentially, Decidueye lost his best partner, but we got a new one with Pheromosa. But a lot of decks, dude, are just running healing and stuff, and like Pheromosa, it does alright damage, but I don't know, dude. It's like it's not doing a lot of damage, so you're gonna be relying on Decidueye to get a lot of KOs. I think Decidueye actually has a pretty good matchup in the stuff like Buzzwole and Guzzlord. But against these other decks, dude, like Stoke Charizard is bad because Pheromosa doesn't do enough damage, where Decidueye can comfortably be able to like knock out that Charizard. I think the Savali matchups are very bad, especially with the new Lollipop variant, dude. I think it's like, what is it, like Blasphemon or whatever the Ultra Beast Lollipop is called, bro. I really don't know the name, but like I think it's like all right into the Ultra Beast decks, but then I think it's bad into like all the other decks in the meta. So I want to put it in low tier because I think it was very good when everyone was just playing Buzzwole, but then everyone just went for more Savali, and that's when I think it fell off. But I think Decidueye is one of those cards. It just needs to either one, a good partner, or I think Masquerada becoming meta relevant again could be the factor that puts it back in like high tier or like even mid tier. You know, a card that I actually forgot to put somewhere, bro, was Lunala EX, because I was like contemplating where I wanted to put this. I was gonna put this in Rogue very uncommon, but to be honest, I have not seen Lunala at all. I actually think it's better than it's being represented. But I guess it doesn't have the best partners right now. So I want to put an underrated because I kind of believe in Lunala, and I think Lunala is actually pretty strong. But maybe it's not, dude. Maybe it's just code. Maybe it's not relevant. Like I said, like this could be underrated in my opinion. Yes, I think it's underrated or just not relevant, bro. I think Lunala is strong. You know, being able to transfer the psychic energy. I guess we are in a meta, bro, where like Cyrus is like heavily played. So like being able to swap out and like living a hit and like attacking for 2 more might not matter because it could just Cyrus in the thing you like swapped out and like transfer the energy onto Lunala from. But I don't think it's bad. I don't know. Maybe it's just my cope. Anyways, next time for the mid tier. So for the first mid tier, I'm gonna put Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko is mainly being played with stuff like Oricorio and Zorora. You know, it's a pretty solid card because on your third or your next attack, if you do go second, you can do 90 damage on your second turn. If you go first, you can do it on your third turn. And yeah, it just does 90 damage. Dude, it's very fast, aggressive. Basically, it's like the new age Pikachu EX from Genetic Apex, but you don't need 3 things in the bench. Then you just have stuff like the electrical cord. You know, it is pretty good in like all the matchups. I think the worst matchup is probably like type null because you can't one-shot it and they get like easily like 2-tap you, get that free KO. Then they have something in the back that's like waiting either their Rampardos or like a second Savali. But I think in the stuff like Buzzwole, bro, can do pretty decent, you know, because you can set up like 2 Tapu Kokos like pretty easily because this one does put energy on itself. And then it is at 130 HP, so unless it has previous damage or if you have a red, like stuff like Buzzwole won't be able to one-shot you. So I think it's pretty decent. But at the end of the day, it's not the best deck. It's just it's like simple as that, man. Because you want to see Tapu Koko early. If you don't get Tapu Koko early, bro, it's like kind of doesn't do anything. Because it like kind of like takes too long to set up. Because the 20 damage is like not a lot, bro, for the first attack. Also, like Oricorio, bro, isn't the best deck right now either. It's like the best card because Savali is so good against it. So, I think Tapu Koko, if it came out last season, bro, would have shined. I think it's a little bit of an awkward spot right now just because Savali is like the most represented deck, and like the best partners are gonna be both cards that are like pretty bad in the Savali, being both Oricorio and Zorora, as they both get one shot. Anyway, I think that actually does it for the mid tiers, bro. I think the only mid tier is actually going to be Tapu Koko. Maybe Decidueye could be mid tier, but I think Tapu Koko is a little bit better into the meta than Decidueye. So the next up high tier is going to be actually Incineroar. So Incineroar is was mainly played with Charizard, the Stoke Charizard, basically as just like another card that have in the deck. It was mainly it's a Litten and an Incineroar thrown in, and you know that's all right. Also, Incineroar can be played in its own deck. Like I definitely have just seen like either Savali Incineroars or just like 18, or not 18 trainer card, but like Incineroar solo decks. Not the most representation, but you do see them like, you know, from time to time. So, you know, having a rare candy instantly, Incineroar can start doing 50 damage, maybe more if the burn stays on. If not, you do max 140 damage. You know, it's pretty tanky. You could play Lily. Very, like, there's like a lot of damage early on with both Litten and Torracat to these grass decks such as Buzzwole. But because it does take 300 to get online, Savali can do a lot of damage before you can get set up sometimes. So I think it just has like a pretty good matchup into stuff like Buzzwole, but against like Savali and even maybe Guzzlord probably doesn't have the best matchup against. But it can definitely still be a strong card. So maybe it's even a mid-tier card. Maybe I'll put it in mid-tier actually, bro, because I feel like it is not the best, bro, especially with Savali being. So I'm gonna put it in mid-tier. I think it's a solid card, 140 damage. The burn is cool, but it's not really getting played anymore, or not as much as it used to. So next up for the high tiers, bro, it's gonna be actually just Arceus. I think Arceus alone is going. Actually, no, it's gonna be Arceus. So Arceus is mainly being played in the Thanos deck, which is Giratina, Darkrai, Crobat, and Arceus. The other variants such as Carnivine kind of fell off, bro, because of Volley. So I think that deck is pretty strong. I think in any of the other variants is pretty weak. Yeah, I think Arceus Crobat is, I mean, 160 damage, bro, is just kind of like crazy. And that's essentially all it is. If you get the God setup, dude, of Arceus, Crobat, and Darkrai, there's not a lot of things that can take that hit, bro. Actually, there's nothing that can take that hit unless like a Charizard or like a giant cape. Pretty bad matchup, I would say, in the Buzzwole, because Buzzwole mostly does snipe all the stuff. You could easily sour something in with Buzzwole, get the one shot, because this deck, you know, has so much room, or this deck doesn't have a lot of room, so they have no healing in the deck. So Buzzwole could be a little bit of a bad matchup. Guzzlord could be pretty rough, but it could do all right in the stuff like Savali, kinda, you know, if you get like your stuff like set up right away. So, you know, just a solid card, bro. It's nothing crazy anymore. But I think it's very strong if you can get the setup. Next up, I think Guzzlord, bro. So Guzzlord, bro, until the other day, I actually thought it was kind of a mid-tier card, but this card is actually kind of broken with the poison package. So it has the 200 attack to be able to like delete your opponent's energy, which can come up. You don't really want to rely on it too much, but it can come up definitely in like that Charizard matchup, because if they do Stoke and you can erase an energy, so they actually can't attack that turn, which can give you a turn of the stall. Or, you know, you could just, like, for example, last night, dude, I actually deleted 3 energy on a solgaleo, which actually won me the game. Because that solgaleo matchup could be a little bit rough. Yeah, so just, you know, with Lusamine and then like the Nahelgo, and then the dude, whatever the dude that the stage 1 is for poison is pretty good. You know, it's a very good combination. Plus you have Celesteela to be able to swap around. So I think it's a very solid deck. I think this deck shits on stuff like Savali. I think this deck does also pretty good actually in the Charizard, surprisingly, because of the poison damage. It's very easy to get Charizard at that HP to actually get one shot. Plus Guzzlord can survive a Charizard attack if you're at 4 HP, full HP, and they don't have a red. But I think the worst matchup can be the Buzzwole. But I think the Buzzwole matchup actually, like, low-key is either even or very slightly favored in the Buzzwole. I think it's all right. So I think Guzzlord just has a pretty decent stuff into the meta. It's not the, you know, it's like a pretty hard deck, I feel like, to pilot, bro. I think it's actually, I don't think it's easy to pilot, bro. But maybe that's just a skill issue on my end. Next up, we have the top tier. So all of these cards are going to be top tier. So Buzzwole, very strong, you know, has Lusamine, the Pheromosa, and Cortana. Literally just everything. Plus you have the access to Erica and Leaf Cape because you are a grass deck. I think Buzzwole is getting a little bit weaker personally, in my opinion, because I'm facing a lot of Charizards and Savali Lollipops. But if you don't face that deck, I feel like this deck is good into every other deck in the meta. Then we have Stoke Charizard. So Stoke Charizard, so the main problem with Stoke Charizard last season, because the main partner was Incineroar, because there wasn't a lot of good fire types. There's still not a lot of good fire types to pair it with, but we don't matter about fire types when you have a colorless attack. So the worst matchup was Oricorio. Oricorio 1 is just not played that much. Plus, you actually played with Silvally now, so you can deal for Oricorio, leaving Charizard to just get a free sweep in the matchups it does good in. And dude, it's 100 HP. You get it right away, like turn 1. A lot of things in this meta, bro. Like Buzzwole, like these Ultra Beast decks take a long time to set up. So those decks can have trouble for a turn 1 Charizard if you don't have like Lusamine and stuff. Or these other decks, you know, sometimes they just wreck, bro, and they can't deal with it. So turn 1 Charizard, bro, is broken. You have Lily, which honestly, the Savali decks don't even run Lily, bro. Like, it's not common to run Lily. So it's really only bad matchup or Oricorio, bro. It just doesn't exist anymore. Giratina Darkrai is still very strong. Giratina, you know, is just very splashable in any deck. Darkrai is mainly just played with Giratina. The 20 ping is kind of broken. I don't know how much do I got to talk about Giratina Darkrai, but it's still a solid deck. Is it as strong as it used to be? No, because Buzzwole actually is very good into it, but it's still the top of the top. And then Solgaleo Shiinotic. So Solgaleo Shiinotic lets you get 2 Solgaleos online pretty consistently, if not just a fast Solgaleo. A lot of things, dude. Solgaleo very good in the Savali. Savali can't really do anything about Solgaleo unless they get like the God setup, dude, to go second and have like a Rampardos. Can't even be trouble for Buzzwole to be able to defeat a Solgaleo. I think his worst matchups are probably Charizard, because I think Charizard is almost unwinnable, and the Darkrai Giratina, just because they do live a Solgaleo attack. I think Solgaleo also does outrun the Guzzlord. I think the matchup is about like almost even-ish. It kind of like depends. If they set up 2 Solgaleos, you're probably losing, but it's very easy for Guzzlord to get an early KO on the Shiinotic, or like just a Pokemon in the active spot. So you get like, yeah, and then the Solgaleo with the poison damage is like pretty easy to defeat with Guzzlord, because Guzzlord can take 2 attacks guaranteed if it's at full HP, because there's no way you're going to be able to do 170 damage with Solgaleo. So yeah, Shiinotic Barge is very aggressive and fast. So I think we have like a lot of top tier decks, or like top tier EX Pokemon / decks this format, where we didn't have last time. Last time has always just been like Darkrai Giratina by itself. Okay, so now that I've had some time to think about this, I think there's some changes I want to do. Basically, I just want to like kind of like organize the tiers, at least like Rogue and up. So I'm actually just going to start by moving actually Decidueye up to mid. I'm going to keep Gallade in... low. I think the Loki could be a category in between this, but it's alright. I want to move Garchomp up, because Garchomp actually has some like 2 really good placings at the first Ursa Days tournament. Then I'm going to move Gengar actually to low tier. Yeah, I think I'm fine with that. I think I'm fine with putting Gengar. I mean, Gengar is here, but is mostly carried by the non-EX Gengar, and they usually just like slot one Gengar EX in. So by itself, it's pretty useless, but like, you know, putting in the package of like the Gengar deck is pretty decent. Then, you know what, bro? I'm just gonna put Articuno in not relevant. It's just really not. It had like that cool thing for like the first 2 days, where like that one guy got like top 100 playing Articuno. But besides that, it's just, I haven't seen anywhere. Then you could even argue like Charizard and stuff, and like Beedrill could like be down, but I think it's whatever, bro. Basically just want to like round out this a little bit more. And yeah, I guess you know why I'm here, bro. So we do have 2 new EX Pokemon that, so Lycanroc 1, 3 energy, bro, is just too much for a fighting deck. There's not a good ramp up in the fighting deck. And why play a Lycanroc for 3 energy for 130 damage when you could just play Rampardos? And then Dugtrio is just a it's just a coin flip, bro. There's just more consistent stuff. You can't play it. Like, why play Dugtrio when you could just go play Solgaleo for 120 damage? So once again, this is the full list, just for an FYI. Like, maybe even like Incineroar, bro. Or like maybe like Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko is probably like high tier, bro. I probably would put it over like Decidueye and Incineroar, because I feel like it's more and better relevant. I don't know if it's the card itself or just the deck that's being played in, but I guess I'll just move it up too. So this is basically the final, like I said, bro. The only stuff that really matters is low tier and above. Rogue is, you know, like stuff you might see, dude. Like Charizard is more like in tournaments, because there's always like a random Charizard doing alright in tournaments at least. And then I feel like these are cards that are like at the like very like low Master Ball that you might see. Then obviously, you know, the underrated is just like some cup stuff for me. But anyways, I think that does it for the video. So if you guys have any different suggestions for stuff you would change in the tier list, let me know, and peace out. Have a lovely day.